Welcome to Sold Out, where we travel through time to try to see the biggest movies on the big screen, only to find out that they're sold out. But we're at the movie theater, so screw it. We see something else instead. I'm Ian Tarter, media critic and movie lover. I'm here with my co-host, Michael Smith.
Hi, I am Michael Smith, a former film student and movie critic. Previously wrote for outlets like the Fan-Sided Network and MoviePass, and very excited to be co-hosting Sold Out.
Excited to have you as my co-host, Michael. Love having you here. We are finishing up our third week in 1975. It has been a great 1975. We saw, James Caan in leather pants.
We did.
We saw Woody Allen in frilly shirts.
Really into the wardrobe, are we?
I think it's finally time to do what we came to 1975 to do. Let's hop on the Orca and see Jaws.
Yes, we finally got to see Jaws. Jaws, at the time, was really the first big summer blockbuster. It became the highest grossing movie up until that point, and it is still the fourth highest grossing movie. This movie is as massive as The Shark. I am really happy to have watched it again because it's one of my favorite movies.
It is one of my favorite movies as well. I think it is time to see Jaws. I'll grab the popcorn.
I'll grab the tickets.
Let's see Jaws.
We're really a little anxious that you're rushing into something serious here.
You all know me. Know how I earn a living.
I can go slow ahead. Come on down and chum some of this shit.
I think he's come back for his noon feeding.
Smile, you son of a...
Woo! That was a thrill ride.
It really was.
I think let's stretch our legs. I didn't have my sea legs ready for that one, so we'll take a break and then we'll come back and we will dive into the dangerous waters of Jaws. We'll be right back with Sold Out. Welcome back to Sold Out. Michael, we just saw Jaws, and I think it's one of my favorite movies of all time. But before we get into it, break it down. What was Jaws about?
All right. Steven Spielberg takes us to Amity Island, New York, a small tourist community with a big problem. A killer shark keeps eating all of the swimmers on its beaches. After some citizen-backed attempts to capture and kill the shark fail, Police Chief Martin Brody partners with oceanographer Matt Hooper and a mysterious shark hunter known only as Quint to take down the oceanic menace once and for all.
So you said that it keeps eating swimmers, and this is a great place to start because the population of Amity is about 1,000 people. How many swimmers does it eat?
I think it was 2.
It has eaten 2 swimmers, which is a lot of swimmers for a population of 1,000.
It's more swimmers than would normally be eaten.
It is. But I think this is the key component of this movie for me that I really want to use to kind of crack it open. We've heard people talk about Bruce the Shark not working. We've heard talk about this being the biggest summer blockbuster of all time. I want to talk about the social responsibility of this movie and why maybe, just maybe, the mayor isn't as wrong as he seems.
Why do you do this to me?
You keep showing up for it, so I keep doing it. I guess until I have some kind of negative feedback, I'm going to continue down this path. So here's what I want to talk about. In 1974, about 1 in 5,000 people died in a car crash, about 1 in 10 million in a plane crash, 1 in 2 million from a lightning strike. And you know how many people died from shark attacks in 1974?
I'm guessing smaller than those numbers, you jerk.
I want you to guess. What
was the plane number?
So the plane number was 1 in 10 million died in a plane crash in 1974.
Probably somewhere around 1 in 300 something million.
Zero people died of shark attacks. There were no people that died of shark attacks.
Okay, then your statistic is meaningless because 2 people just got eaten on Amity Island. We have defied the statistics. We have a real problem.
We have hindsight. If I'm the mayor and that girl gets found on the beach And I'm told by the coroner and the police chief, who, by the way, what's his history with shark attacks?
Probably minimal.
Well, where did Brody come from?
Oh, the police chief.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about the coroner.
Oh, we'll get into the coroner as well. But let's start with the police chief.
Okay,
He's always
from
pushing.
New York City.
Yeah. How long has he been on Amity Island?
Months.
he an
Not very
Islander?
long. He is definitely not an Islander.
Can he ever be an Islander?
Well, I have been reliably informed that unless you were born on the island, you can never become an Islander.
Okay. So how many people do you think he's seen attacked by sharks in New York City?
Probably very few.
Okay. Now the coroner. How many people do you think that this old coroner on Amity Island, population 1,000, has seen attacked by sharks, which, by the way, is in northern, colder waters? And 0 people were eaten in 1974. There were 6 shark attacks, but none of them were killed.
I'm guessing none.
I'm guessing none. That feels like a safe number as well. Okay. So you have somebody who's never seen a shark attack telling somebody else who's never seen a shark attack that this was a shark attack for this poor girl that was attacked by a shark, right?
Yeah.
But it is very important that our leaders think statistically. If they are reacting and using intuition and gut instinct, it is very likely that they will lead communities astray. And so the mayor says, well, this was a boat attack, or a propeller is what chewed up this girl. How many people do you think have been hit by propellers on Amity?
I mean, probably quite a few, but we did not see the body. Based on people's reactions to the body, it was pretty bad.
You ever seen a body that got hit by a boat propeller?
I mean, is it missing like the bottom half?
Yeah, it's pretty horrifying. It will literally chew you up. There's a terrible court case I had to study in law school on this, actually, regarding a girl that got hit by a boat propeller, and it did cut her in half.
Well, that's bad.
And much, much more likely. So I'm going to play a little clip for us, and I want to discuss why maybe, and again, I want to be clear, I don't think the mayor's right, but maybe he's less wrong than he seems.
Well, what else could have done that to that girl? Boat propeller?
Well, I think possibly, yes, a boating
That's
accident.
not what you told me over the phone.
I was wrong. We'll have to amend our reports.
And you'll stand by
I'll
that?
stand by you.
Martin, a summer girl goes swimming. Swims out a little far. She tires.
One of those summer girls.
Fishing boat comes along.
It's happened before.
I don't think you appreciate the gut reaction people have to these things.
Harry, I appreciate it. I'm just reacting to what I was told.
I'm just reacting to what I was told. He's having the exact reaction that the mayor is describing. Somebody says shark and suddenly everybody goes, oh, she must have been eaten by a shark. Brody has no reason to believe that she was eaten by a shark. Brody's never seen a shark. He doesn't go on the water.
I will give you this thing, which is that it is established that Brody is afraid of the ocean.
And is from New York and has just arrived on Amity Island,
Right.
the island of friendship.
Which means that he may have some sort of, confirmation bias happening here.
Oh, you think?
But also the same could be said for the mayor, right? I mean, he
absolutely.
comes up with boat propeller off the top of his head because he needs a reason why it wasn't a shark.
Well, also because it is the most likely explanation, though.
Potentially. I mean, we don't have a boat.
But there are boats out on the water all the time on this island. Like, we know that, there's a lot of fishing that goes on. So the likelihood, again, it's just about statistical
So on the
thinking.
island of friendship, there's a hit and run boating propeller accident?
By a drunk fisherman. Quint is out there, remember? You think Quint's never hit somebody with a boat propeller and didn't
Doesn't
realize
seem
it?
very friendly.
You think he didn't, hit somebody and not realize it? Do you think he's sober once in this movie? I'm not talking about Robert Shaw. We already know the answer to that. I'm talking about Quint.
Probably not.
Okay. And you think he's the only fisherman out there like that?
No.
They probably have a lot of boating accidents and maybe not as bad as this one, but they do. So the mayor is thinking statistically it is more likely that this girl was hit by a boat propeller since no one last year in the entire United States was ever eaten by a shark. Now, whether the mayor knows that or doesn't know that,
He doesn't seem like a reader.
maybe he's not a reader, right? But he is leaning towards something that is far more likely to have occurred than a shark attack in this particular community. Mm-hmm. And he is really, I feel like the movie takes his point of view that he is so petty for thinking about keeping the beaches open, for keeping the businesses open.
I don't know that it's petty so much as
Greedy?
or just political and bureaucratic.
Okay, sure. But isn't that his job?
Sure.
I mean, you say sure, like, no, like, give me more. What else is...
No, it's just, this is actually an interesting conversation to have with the hindsight of COVID, actually.
I knew you were going to bring up COVID. I was like, how far can I get into this discussion to talk about COVID? Because we were wrong.
Because...
I mean...
We
hot take, sorry, but like I don't think that the way we handled it was super duper.
Right. But what we did was to your point, I suppose.
You suppose.
Is we took a scenario where it was statistically very unlikely that this was going to kill except certain specific subpopulations, and we shut down an entire society at great economic and social cost.
Exactly.
Yet that's human nature. That's how people behave. That's how we engage. But that's also hindsight.
Well, yes.
And in this case, there was a shark that was eating people.
Have you ever read Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow?
No, I'm also not much of a reader.
It's a book, pretty popular, and I'm going to do very poor justice to this book, but the very, very short version of it is, it breaks down how our brains are designed to rush to heuristics and like decide on something really rapidly because we have to. So like when I'm speaking right now, I'm thinking fast because I've used English a lot and I've talked about movies a lot and I don't have to think very hard about what I'm saying, which I'm sure you can riff on right now if you'd like. No, you're not going to take that shot?
I'm not.
I literally teed you up for that shot.
I know.
Okay. But system 2 thinking is where we have to slow down and solve a problem. So like if you ask me what's 2 plus 2, 4. I don't have system 2. If you ask me what 728 times 12.
Yeah, you have to do the math.
But you automatically, your brain almost like locks up when you do that. The book posits that our brains want to system 1 think. Mm-hmm. It's not that they're lazy, it's that they're efficient. They want to move very rapidly into system 1. I'm positing that Brody and the coroner are system 1 thinking hardcore right here. And that the mayor is also system 1 thinking, but he's system 1 thinking more in line with kind of what his job is versus what the coroner and the police chief's job is. Because the police chief, his job is safety, and he's worried about people's safety. And so he system 1's in that direction, while the mayor system 1's in this direction. They're both wrong.
Yeah, I guess, well, for one, this is a horror movie, right? And so it's meant to be about emotion, right?
Well, I mean, movies are meant to be about emotion, but it's meant to be about like fear specifically.
But also, I don't believe that the mayor is choosing boat propeller because he is familiar with the statistics on shark attacks versus boats.
Nor do I. And that's why I said I believe he is using system 1 thinking, but he's using it in line with his office.
Right. So if both people are just throwing out what is their sort of instinctual answer, the mayor was wrong.
Well, he was, but if you had put a system 2 thinker in charge in the situation...
We didn't have one of those. We had two system 1 thinkers. One was right, one was wrong.
Well, I mean, everybody's a system 1, system 2. But if somebody had been applying system 2 thinking in this particular moment, they would have arrived at the mayor's conclusion.
Okay, let's jump forward just a little bit. Okay. Let's accept your premise.
Oh, you're so generous.
We then have beach day.
We do.
And poor Alex goes swimming.
Alex Kintner.
Yeah, Alex Kintner. He goes swimming.
He does.
What happens to young Alex, Ian?
He gets ground up like a goddamn sausage. That scene is absolutely horrifying. Yeah. The way they made the water look chunky and red, it's like the kid's in a fucking blender.
Yeah, it's...
That scene shakes me to my core.
And you know what's...
And I love it. It's so fucking good.
Equally horrifying is the way that they show his mother like realizing that it's him.
Oh God, you're in the place of her. I mean his mother, but honestly, Brody, like seeing that scene through Brody's eyes and the way that scene's shot. I know you're getting me into talking about the film now, which good for you. I'm so proud of you.
We're going to get back to this.
No, I know. But the way it's Brody and then a beachgoer walks by and then you get this really great like jump cut and then another jump cut where you were looking through his eyes and you're watching the ocean because he believes that there is a shark. He's terrified that there is a shark out there, even though, again, I don't think that he's thinking about it right, but he is scared. And again, the mayor calls it out. When you say shark, what happens? Well, the coroner said shark to Brody, and now Brody's mind is absolutely locked on shark, and it's all he can think about, and he is sitting on that beach just absolutely horrified.
Okay. So Alex is now eaten. We now know that there's a shark.
Yes, we do now know that there's a shark.
We then move to the shark hunting situation. They know there's a shark. We've agreed that we need to get rid of shark. A bunch of boaters go out to get shark. A shark is captured and they bring it in.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, great, the problem's been solved. We can open the beaches again. But now you have shark expert, right?
Yes.
Hooper has now shown up. He's an oceanographer. He's an expert on a shark. And he is saying this shark could not have possibly caused the wounds on the original girl who was attacked.
That's not exactly what he says.
He says the bite is not large enough.
It's not exactly what he says.
There are all kinds of sharks in the waters, you know? Hammerheads, white tips, blues, makos. And the chances that these bozos got the exact shark...
now there's no other sharks like this in these waters.
It's 100 to 1. 100 to 1. Now, I'm not saying that this is not the shark. It probably is, Martin. It probably is. It's a man-eater. It's extremely rare for these waters. But the fact is that the bite radius on this animal is different than the wounds on the victim.
I know, but he still says it probably is, and it's 100 to 1.
I want to be sure. You want to be sure. We all want to be sure, okay? And what I want to do is very simple. The digestive system of this animal is very, very slow. Let's cut it open. Whatever it's eaten in the last 24 hours is bound to still be in there, and then we'll be sure.
Maybe the only way to confirm it, huh?
Look, fellas, let's be reasonable, huh? This is not the time or the place to perform some kind of a half-assed autopsy on a fish.
Brody flaps like a sail in the wind. He starts off with, this is the shark. The oceanographer comes in and says, hey, it probably is the shark, but let's just be sure. And what does Brody do? Flip immediately back to fear.
Well, but he's, in both of these examples, he's deferring to the so-called experts, which is what you're saying we should be doing.
Oh, that's not what I'm saying we should be doing. I'm saying we should think statistically. I actually have a problem with our expert as well. Experts are there to provide data so that we can make statistical decisions. They should not be making policy decisions. But we allow Hooper to influence policy. And I think that's what makes this movie so wonderful, is it is a microcosm of these types of events where suddenly you encounter a brand new danger to society, and you have an expert saying this, and you have the police saying this, and you have the politician saying this, and then you have the working class man, Quint, saying this. And you have all of these conflicting opinions coming in together with how to deal with this problem. I don't think I said already, you know what the cost of closing down Amity for the 4th of July weekend would have been to the people of Amity?
I'm guessing, I don't know, in $1975, but probably the equivalent of millions of dollars.
So if you assume that the average tourist is spending about $100 to $150 a day on hotel, food, whatever else during the course of this 3-day weekend, they know they're getting about 10,000 to 15,000 people on the island for the weekend. It's going to cost them about $22 to $24 million in today's money. This literally could be the difference between somebody eating for the rest of the year and not. Do you know what the death rate of poverty is? It's higher than sharks.
All right. You win. We, should just start feeding children to sharks so that the economy can keep on churning.
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is Brody's not qualified to make this decision, right? The mayor's not qualified to make this decision. The oceanographer is closer to being qualified to make this decision, but he's not an expert in policy and how to handle this. And he also is not looking at it from an economic standpoint, which is an important standpoint to take, even if you ultimately decide to close the beaches. He's not thinking about that. He's thinking about a shark eating people.
Ian, you realize you're describing a really shitty movie, right? No, I'm saying your movie. Like if people made the correct choices according to you, like, it would just be a really bad movie. No one would go on a boat. There would be no shark hunting.
I don't want the characters to have made these decisions. I want to be really, really clear. I do not. I think all the decisions that get made result in a fucking fantastic movie. And we will, I promise, talk about how good the movie is. I just want to be clear that the movie is teaching a strange lesson. And I think it's just important to just pause and talk about that lesson. I also know that there's a lot of fun facts about this movie and Bruce the shark not working and all these things, but it's been covered to death. Mm-hmm. And so I really wanted to talk about, like, what is the social impact of a movie like this? And I said this to you before we started recording, and I will say it now. Steven Spielberg might be a terrorist. Steven Spielberg directed Jaws and created enormous fear and economic downturn because people stopped going on vacations to the beach. People were terrified. My mother still won't go to the beach. She talks about Jaws every time. And she said that summer, like many people, didn't go to the beach. And so I think a movie that did
I
that.
think that was his intent.
Oh, no. I do not mean to imply it was his intent. I just think that's what happened because he is so good at tapping into what makes us excited, what makes us scared. And he did it with such just excellent filmmaking, excellent writing, like every shot. There's nothing that this movie has no bloat.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's really, we've said this off mic before, while acknowledging that there's absolutely no such thing. I think Jaws is a perfect movie.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I know Quentin Tarantino is on record saying that it's a perfect movie as well, because it really does all of these things. And it's, as always, I'm coming here sound like I'm being really critical. I legitimately love this movie, and I love this movie because it raises these important questions about when you're faced with the unknown, and especially an unknown danger. What do you do? Like, how do you approach this problem? And I think in this instance, and it's why I like the movie, everybody does it wrong.
Yeah.
And the only person who ends up seeming like they're right is just the one who guessed right. But he didn't approach the problem right. He didn't look at the problem and actually try to solve it in a way that somebody who was thinking about all of the facets of all of the risk, he was fixated. He was fixated on the shark. And I think that scene of him on the beach watching the Kittner boy going out to sea is a great example of it, because he is. That's what he is, so hyper-focused on this singular fear, which I feel like I'd want the chief of police maybe doing his job.
Maybe I sympathize with Brody a little bit. I don't have a fear of water or the ocean. I like beaches. I like boats. But I do have beef with like the marine animals.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And so like this maybe confirms some of my biases. Sharks, I know the statistics. This guy ate some children. But, you also have the dolphins who just rape and murder willy-nilly. You have
the gangsters of the sea.
You have the killer whales that have been sinking boats in the Mediterranean for fun. The scientists had this theory that it was like some sort of like revenge thing. No, did more. It was just because they were bored. I'm just saying, if I were there, I would have gone on the boat, which is called the Orca. I don't like that. It's a propaganda term. They're killer whales. And I'd been out there just, corking blowholes.
So you've been trying to make me out as the bad guy in this episode, but I want to be clear. You're a whale killer?
I think that a lot of problems could be solved.
So you side with whale killers.
The elimination of whales.
How do you feel about baby seals? Are you pro or anti-clubbing?
I'm anti-clubbing.
You're anti-clubbing. Okay, I'm trying to figure out where you are on the moral.
I am pro-human. These ocean creatures don't seem to be.
Well,
so that's a long way to say that I was rooting for our trio as they went out shark hunting. I felt what they were feeling.
Oh, I was rooting for them as well, but I too am a little scared of the ocean. I have cephalopods. They freak me out. Nothing should move like that. Nothing should think like that. They're not even out to kill me.
But if they were, they could get you. They could like sneak under doors. The ocean's definitely not for us.
No, you can spend 2 minutes under it and then you die, which means it's definitely not for us. We have gone absolutely off the rails. We're cutting all of this.
Probably.
Okay. So here's I want to get back, right? So let's get back to the movie. So when everyone is guessing at what the issue is, the question for me, and the question the movie poses, is who do you trust? And I think the movie sort of posits that you trust, I don't know, like the person sounding the alarm.
I think they stack the deck in Brody's favor.
Well, they do
a bit,
absolutely,
right? Because the characterization of I guess let's call it 4 kind of major players in this, right?
I think the mayor is like a less major, but yes, I think he's an important
player.
So
we've talked about him, right? He's really characterized as someone who is driven by these political, economic concerns, which, to your point, may be reasonable, but they do not kind of play at emotions, and cinema is an emotional experience. You have Matt Hooper, the oceanographer, who I think is a good guy, but he is introduced to us as like this sort of rich kid with family money who's only an oceanographer because he can buy all of the expensive equipment that the government's not willing to pay for itself.
Which I actually do want to pause on that because that's a weird character. Like, why are we setting up the oceanographer, the scientist, the expert as the rich, spoiled kid? I don't know how many scientists you know, but that feels uncommon. I don't know. Like that doesn't like I love Hooper's character. Absolutely love him. But that to me is such a strange choice.
Right. And it introduces this sort of like fundamental, I guess, I don't even want to call it a flaw necessarily. It's not his fault that he was born into money, but it does, I think, make an audience less likely to trust him.
Exactly. Yeah. Because he's been given this economic freedom to pursue his interests, which for some reason we hold that against him. But then,
And then you have Quint.
Oh,
and Quint, he's introduced in a town meeting. He gets attention from everyone by scraping his nails on a chalkboard. It's never well received. And he says, hey, like, I'm a shark hunter. You guys are doing this all wrong. Pay me $10,000. I'll take care of your problem. And he is kind of seen as extorting the town, right? Like they immediately turn on him, say that he's just trying to get their money, that he's, a huckster of some kind, right? And then you have Brody, who is kind of a family man, seems to be guided by a moral compass, talks about moving from the city to Amity because he felt like he could make a bigger difference in a smaller community. And I don't know if if you saw this, but I actually was sort of reminded of Marshal Will Kane from High Noon in the scenes when he is running around the town, trying to close the beaches, trying to get people to help him.
Yeah.
And so he's like this anti-Dirty Harry, right? And so I think those four characterizations really set us up as the audience to sympathize the most with Brody's position. And it's a good thing it does, because if you don't do that, we don't get all the fun shit that comes after.
No, 100%. But I do think even Brody's position, I think it's worth mentioning, is undermined by the fact that he is from off island. And so we know that he's an outsider, and automatically we're sort of like, okay, we're mistrustful as outsiders as an audience member. But then he also brings fresh perspective as an outsider. So I like that duality of that within his character.
I like that, the perspective versus experience. But I also think even the outsiderness and perhaps the distrust that comes from that is undermined because like some of the people on the island are kind of portrayed as jerks when they talk about like never being able to become an islander. And so even that sort of like knock to his credibility I don't know that it hits as much to an audience because the people who are holding that against him are not characterized in a very favorable way.
Well, that may be the case, but I still think that when you know someone's from the outside, they know less about the community. Mm-hmm. He's still getting to know the community, and he's actually kind of ignoring the concerns of the community as he's chasing the shark because kids are karate chopping the fences.
The kids are karate chopping the fences.
You got, those little punks are going around and karate chopping fences. And, he's told that when he comes into the office, and then one of his citizens walks up and he's like, what are you going to do about this? These kids are busting our fences, and he's not that interested in it.
I think that's actually a really clever thing to do in the movie because like you were making the point that he's basically not doing his job because he's so fixated on this one shark.
Yeah.
There's no policing happening on this entire island because he's fixated on the shark. But they give us this little nugget that basically says like maybe there isn't any policing to do because if the biggest concern is that some kids are karate chopping fences, the risk here is minimal.
Yeah, like what do you expect the police chief to do about that the community can't do? Like you can't just go to the parents of the kids and say, hey, can you tell them not to karate chop our fences? Also, side note,
I mean, this was 1975. He could have karate chopped the kid.
Karate chopping a fence and breaking it? Dude, these kids are going to the Olympics. Like, how old are these kids?
Well, they established that the problem was that they opened a karate school and it's making the children too talented.
They're so good at karate in this. They should go out and hunt the shark.
I like that idea.
But yeah, so like Brody's not, he's not doing his job, but the movie, to your point, does a great job of establishing that he doesn't really have a job to do necessarily on this island. And the question also is begged is like, why did they hire him if this is like the only problem that this community faces is that kids are karate chopping? But then you also have Deputy Hendricks. And I think it's worth bringing out the only other police officer on the entire island. What does he do?
It doesn't follow instructions very well.
He's like nervous about talking to the boaters, about having too many people on the boats. Like, I'm really curious, like, if he has any competence as a police officer as well, which, I mean, the third act, Brody goes on the boat for 2.5 days. He is out of town, and there is one police officer in this town.
And it's the one that has been established as not being particularly competent.
I mean, I would say wholly incompetent. He's nervous about asking people to not get on the boats when there's too many people. So what is he capable of doing? This comes back to just like Brody's absolute fixation. You know, going on about fixations and Quint, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. So you mentioned Quint's introduction with his nails down the chalkboard. Again, just to unpack it a little bit, obviously him doing that tells you that he understands what will cut through noise, right?
Yes.
But it actually tells you so much more about this character of Quint than I think initially sort of meets your eye. So he knows what will cut through noise. He also is not bothered by dragging his fingernails down a chalkboard, which, think about the type of person who's willing to do that. Like, have you ever bumped a fingernail against a chalkboard? It makes my bones vibrate.
I was going to say, like, the only thing worse than the sound might be the feeling.
Exactly. I think the feeling actually is worse than the sound. And then he also does not give a flying fuck what anybody in this town thinks of him.
No, he makes his demands. They react poorly, and he continues piling on new ones.
Mm-hmm.
And there's things that happen later that make me question, does he even give a shit about the payment?
I mean, what he says is he's not willing to put his neck on the line for less. I think he just wants to be valued for what he does. Mm-hmm. Now, he originally was supposed to be introduced in a movie theater. Spielberg had wanted Quint, Robert Shaw, to be sitting in a movie theater watching Moby Dick and just laughing maniacally about how silly this all was and how it didn't look real until everybody in the theater left, and then you could hear him laughing down the street. And the only reason, and I love these happy little accents, the only reason that they didn't use it was when they contacted Gregory Peck to get the rights to do it. Gregory Peck was like, I really don't mind you using this movie, but I don't think that was my best work, and I don't want it represented again on film, and I don't like the idea of it being made fun of, so no. Huh. And so that introduction went away, and what resulted in, I mean, a fucking brilliant, perfect. I love that is when you see Quint, is that this old shark hunter appears in this big town meeting. He's shown up because he knows that everybody is scared. He knows that everybody's upset, and he is going to take advantage of the situation because he understands how these people function better than anybody else.
This is funny because I agree that at this point in the movie, that is what we're given. Like, with the information we have, that is the conclusion I would reach. What happens once they are on the Orca makes me think completely differently about Quint and his motivations.
Okay, tell me more.
So I'm going to try to build this up as efficiently as possible. But basically, like, this is a movie.
Fix it in post, right?
Yeah, let's hope. I'm sorry, a lot of work for you. This is a movie that's fundamentally about fear. It's about what fear does to us, the types of things that we fear. It does it in a really amazing way because it plays with those things to elicit fear in the audience, right? Like, one of the things that most people have a fear of is the unknown. So, speaking of happy accidents, the shark isn't shown until an hour and 20 minutes into this movie.
I know.
We don't see the shark. You have the brilliant John Williams score. You have the point of view shots. You have, like, on the boat with the fishing line, just the slow kind of click, click, click before the shark runs away, right? It builds this tension in the audience so that we're feeling fear while watching a movie that is about fear. You have Brody, who's afraid of the ocean, the mayor who's afraid of the consequences. And then you have, like, the moral compromises that people will make due to their fear. I think that for Quint, the fight with the shark is personal.
Okay.
I think that he knew he was going to die. I don't think he cared.
You think he knew he was going to die?
Yeah.
Tell me why you thought so I'd be willing to admit that he was prepared to die. I don't know that I saw any clues that he knew he was going to die. So I'm super curious.
Yeah, maybe he didn't know, but he was definitely prepared for it. And he makes certain decisions that sort of lead to it. And I think this might be a good place. My favorite scene in this movie And one of my favorite scenes in any movie is a monologue delivered by Quint about his experience on the USS Indianapolis.
Thursday morning, Chief, I bumped into a friend of mine, Herbie Robinson from Cleveland. Baseball player, bosun's mate. I thought he was asleep. Reached over to wake him up. Bobbed up and down in the water. It was like a kind of top. Upended. Well, he'd been bitten in half below the waist. Noon the fifth day, Mr. Hooper, Lockheed Ventura saw us. He swung in low and he saw us too. A young pilot, a lot younger than Mr. Hooper anyway. He saw us and he come in low, and 3 hours later, a big fat PBY comes down and started to pick us up. You know, that was the time I was most frightened, waiting for my turn. I'll never put on a life jacket again.
So he establishes that death is not what he's afraid of. It's the anticipation of death. And he says he'll never put a life jacket on again. And then he makes good on that promise later in the movie. He grabs life vests for Hooper and Brody, does not grab one for himself. And I think that if he starts to feel like death is coming, rather than waiting for it and fearing that anticipation, that unknown, he goes for it head on.
Hence his sliding feet first into the jowls of Jaws.
Yeah. And then he obviously in that scenario is in a hopeless situation. There's no getting out of that. He's not going to survive, but he fights till the very end. He is stabbing and stabbing and stabbing. And I think it is because he has this personal vendetta. He just wants to make the shark hurt.
First, I agree with everything that you said there. Absolutely. I think he is prepared to die. I didn't even think about him not putting life vests on, but handing them to Hooper and Brody, which I love that detail. You know, that monologue that we played, you mentioned it's one of your favorites. It's Spielberg's favorite part of the film as well. As we were listening to it, just having the audio, that John Williams score underneath it, the strings just pulling through and just heightening the tension of this phenomenal monologue. You know, the fun thing about this monologue is...
It's another happy accident.
It is another happy accident. So it was written and then rewritten by John Milius, and then Robert Shaw rewrote it again. And what we hear is the Robert Shaw version of it. Robert Shaw was a playwright in addition to being an actor and a heavy drinker who pissed off Richard Dreyfuss on the regular. But he still is like bringing so much talent into this movie. He is the gravitas. He is the weight. I mean, the mayor's wearing the anchor suit, but really Quint is the one bringing all of the weight to this film that is just making this movie. He's just taking it from being that monster movie and elevating it along with all of these other things that just make it something that it shouldn't have been.
Right. This movie is a miracle. It was so plagued with production issues. It was being written as they went. Another little thing about that monologue is the USS Indianapolis event, like the story of the event, wasn't declassified until they were in the middle of production. Really? That story was not originally going to be included at all.
Really? No way.
And so that maybe undermines my theory because I don't know what order they filmed certain things in. But it just... so many things happened not on purpose that somehow led to a movie that we have called perfect.
And this is where I think something is really interesting about sort of the movie itself is almost like the shark itself, in that everything that led up to it says that it should have been wrong, but it ended up being right in hindsight. But then we also have this weird storytelling about it where it's, oh, this went wrong and Bruce didn't work and Robert Shaw was a problem on set and they would have to wait these long stretches of time and the script wasn't ready and the crew apparently was very upset with Spielberg. In fact, he left a day early right before they blew up the shark because he had heard that they were going to throw him in the bay. And I think all of these stories would lead me to believe that this movie was a happy accident, that this is just an accidental masterpiece. But then we have another 50 years of Spielberg making fucking crazy good movies.
Yeah.
And so I wonder how much of it is happy accident, how much of it is the fact that Spielberg was very new in making Jaws. He made, one film prior to this?
Yeah.
And he didn't know he wasn't as emotionally prepared to deal with all of these events that occurred during filmmaking as he is when he makes Jurassic Park, right? As he is when he makes Indiana Jones. That the narrative that comes out is that, oh my gosh, everything was a mess and everything was crazy and things didn't go as planned. But because these were all relatively new filmmakers, apart from Robert Shaw, really, who died shortly thereafter, then the only narratives we have are from people who saw this as being a disaster, but maybe this is just what filmmaking was like with Spielberg going forward, and he's just more emotionally prepared and isn't looking at it through this lens, when in fact, because this movie becomes, in a lot of ways, the template for the summer blockbuster. Not just the marketing, but, how do we make a movie that really attacks people's feelings in this way and sort of relentlessly. And so I guess I question how much of this is like as abnormal as maybe it seemed to them at the time.
Well, I also wonder how much of it's just apocryphal. Like are there stories that are just exaggerated, right? Because you'll get certain bits and pieces where Dreyfuss will tell a different version of a story than Spielberg will or some of the screenwriters will. And we have 50 years, right? And this movie is huge, and if there's going to be a legend, you're going to want your role in that legend to be as big as possible. But also, it was his second movie. Like, he was probably just a better artist than a manager.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that this became like the template for the summer blockbuster, and it really did, right? I mean, prior to this, studios, the only movies that got wide releases were the things that were crappy because they just wanted to get them out there and get as much money in a first weekend as possible before people heard that it was crappy. And they said with the good stuff, you want to have like a slow burn so you could build the word of mouth and kind of give it legs. They made a different choice here. Scaled down. The original plan was actually bigger, but because it went so over budget and past due, the studio kind of got
over everything.
Got cold feet. But it did. It blew up. It became, at the time, the highest grossing movie of all time. And now it's the model that we follow. And the question I have for you is, do you think cinema is better for it?
Yes, I do. I think that if monster movies had not evolved into what Jaws was, and we were still living in the era of monster movies being sort of this B idea of what a film could be, I think it's better for that reason. But I think the other thing it did is it brought nerds into the fold. But it is a movie that is made for the middle class masses.
Yeah, I mean it's middlebrow, right?
It is absolutely.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No, it's not bad. But it made movies. It allowed movies to get bigger. It allowed movies to reach more audiences. And did we sacrifice a little bit because of it? Maybe. But then I look at the incredible films that were made by the auteurs of the 90s, and that's all in a post-Jaws universe in which we still got phenomenal directors coming up, being able to break out of the studio system again. Because some people say that Jaws sort of, you had that fight against the studio system with Godfather and Coppola and what he was doing, and then suddenly Jaws was like, no, let's go back to the studio system and make these big, heavy movies where producers are heavily involved. And we've watched the industry go back and forth, but without Jaws, we don't have Indiana Jones, which, I mean, Raiders of the Lost Ark is maybe one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah.
I don't know if I like it more or less than Jaws. I find it to be more rewatchable because it's not as tense. But so yes, that was a very, very, very long equivocating yes, but I do think that we paid a little bit for it as a result. Do you think we're better? I assume you do.
I do. So my instinct at first was actually no.
Okay.
Because I look at, and I don't want to make them my punching bag, but I look at kind of like the Marvel movies, which really were kind of back to the studio system.
Down, huh?
They would sign actors to multi-film deals. The producer really was the artistic voice in most of those. And you have in a lot of ways an industry where a studio really maps out a decade by these like tentpole features, right? And there are certain creative sacrifices that come with that, but they make $1 billion. And so the incentive structure is there, and I don't know if they can even be blamed.
Do you agree with Scorsese that they're not cinema?
I don't think I'd go that far.
Okay.
I do think that I think that they are probably a product first, but I don't think that you can take away the artistry required to still create those.
Where does Jaws sort of fall on that for you? Because Jaws, in a lot of ways, was sort of the first product.
Yeah, I mean, they had like merchandise and all of that stuff.
It had wide release. It had this slow burn TV advertising. I mean, this is this is also like a lesson in marketing.
Yeah, and this is where I then turn, right, and come to, I do think this is good. Because all of that stuff enables the really good stuff to get made. The auteur movies of the 90s, right? Those had solid budgets.
They did.
Right? That wouldn't have happened if we didn't have big blockbusters, if Hollywood wasn't, able to basically pay for one thing with this other thing.
The sort of one for me, one for them.
Yeah. And then on the other side, like, I may not love, again, using Marvel just as an example.
Just going to keep taking, we're going to end up watching Marvel movies on this show one way or the other. Yeah. And we're going to have to.
Right. And maybe I'll change my mind a little bit. I may not love all of the movies. I do love some of them. But, I'll be damned if I don't really like all of the IP integration when I go to Disney.
Well, right? That's a different thing entirely. And I think if we're saying, do we think it was good for cinema? That's a different question than was it good for theme parks? Because I like seeing Jaws at the Universal Studios tour also. Like, I actually saw that shark before I ever saw the movie.
I think that a lot of these studios are just enabled to do more through this. And I think like we just have so much more media now than we ever had before.
We do. I mean, we can get into this in another episode, but yeah, I think that because we're awash in media, it makes it really difficult. And it's part of the reason that I wanted to start this podcast with you is because we are awash in so much new media that we've forgotten to go back and look at all of these wonderful things that have already been made by incredible directors, by incredible artists, these big swings, some of the ones that work, some of the ones that got completely overshadowed by movies like Jaws and Star Wars and Avengers. And so, no, I don't want to live in a world that is as awash in media as we currently are. And then to know how many people spend all day watching YouTube and never watch any of these wonderful films. Keep watching us on YouTube, subscribe, hit the notification bell. So no, I don't think that's a good thing. But I think what you're saying is maybe the mayor was right, and looking out for the economic goodness of Amity is the only way that they could move forward and continue to support the industry that was Amity, even if it meant making a couple sacrifices like Ant-Man Quantumania or John Carter, so that we could have this wonderful film tableau that we have now. And since I hit that call back, we're going to take a break and we're going to come back with our MVPs. Stay tuned for more Sold Out.
Welcome back to Sold Out. We just had a great discussion about Jaws. I think we established that for both of us, this is one of our favorite movies of all time. I know we have established this. We're very confident in that assessment.
Quite established, even though they make poor bureaucratic decisions.
And now it is time for us to pick out the MVP of the movie. There's a lot of good stuff to choose from.
You said it. We are 3 episodes in to the launch of our wonderful podcast, Sold Out. I'm having a blast with you, and I have failed you on our 3rd episode. I cannot decide on an MVP for this movie because there are too many from which to choose. I have narrowed it down to 3. I will be posting a poll to see what y'all think out there, but here's where I'm at. Was it Robert Shaw? We both agree that his monologue is absolutely brilliant. Not only did he deliver brilliantly, he was a co-writer of that monologue. He brings more weight to the film than anyone else. I think he elevates it along with some other elements, but without him, I don't think the movie hits. I can't imagine this movie without him. So, was it Shaw? Was it Bruce the Shark? So the team behind Bruce the Shark, yes, they are sort of known for having made something that didn't quite work. Necessity is the mother of invention. And because Bruce didn't work the way they had anticipated, this created a scenario in which the film doesn't show the shark so much and creates this element of fear that still is residing within my chest as we're sitting here talking about this movie. This is when just horror and thriller does the best work, is when you just see glimpses of the thing, and what's inside your imagination is so much worse. And so because this happened, we have this incredible horror film that works on so many levels. Or was it Bill Butler, the cinematographer? Because the fact of the matter is, the cinematography of this movie is, I mean, it's mind-blowing. This is all shot on film, on phenomenally heavy cameras, at sea.
I mean, he had to basically build rigs and stuff that just didn't exist before.
The stuff that they had to do to make this work, between shooting on different types of film to make sure the sky was even because they couldn't pull the blue out. The skies were too blue, but they wanted overcast, to the point of view shots on the boat, to the fact that they could not show land no matter what, or other boats, to give that sense of isolation, and that they were able to do it. And then all of the underwater shooting. So I'm between those three, but I'm also like John Williams. I'll say, but because of Bill Butler, despite all the statistics I cited, I probably still won't go to the beach this summer. So I'm sorry. I have failed you. I cannot choose an MVP.
You're much like Bruce in that, we still love you even though you don't work right.
Fuck. Rough.
Well, my MVP is the mayor. No.
Hey, he was great.
No, I cast my vote for Robert Shaw. For all of the reasons you listed. I think Jaws is one of my favorite movies. Quint is one of my favorite characters in any movie. The monologue we discussed is just so perfect. The clip we played didn't even include my favorite part of the monologue, which is the black eyes, like a doll's eyes.
Oh, I feel like I let you down. I'm the one who recorded that clip for you.
No, you didn't let me down at all. I think the part that you gave me led to the right discussion. Even though there were some not so great elements of his contribution to the movie. He binge drank, as you mentioned. He fought with Richard Dreyfuss a lot. Whenever it was possible, he would flee to Canada to avoid tax issues.
I did not know that.
So, but as you said, this movie would not be the movie that it is without his Quint. It's just, it's hard to describe how perfect that performance is, how just amazing that character is. So he's my MVP.
I think you are swaying the vote.
I would like to.
Of our listeners. All right. Well, maybe it'll be Robert Shaw. So I have loved hanging out in 1975 with you, but it is time to pick our next movie and our next year to which we'll be traveling. I'm a little nervous. This is our first time doing this.
Me too.
But I'm going to push the time travel button if you're ready.
I'm so nervous. What's going to happen?
71.
So number 71.
That will take us to... Oh, we're sticking with Spielberg.
Really?
Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
The Last Crusade.
Oh, boy.
So we will be traveling to 1989.
That is the year I was born.
That is the year you were born. Oh, let's not talk about the year I was born.
This is fun. I was really afraid it was going to be a Marvel movie right after.
I mean, that would have been fun to have gone to a Marvel movie, but I am never mad about hanging in the 80s. I am a child of the 80s. This was maybe the first Indiana Jones movie that I actually got to see because my parents were super protective and strange, and maybe we'll dive into all of my childhood weirdness on one of these episodes, but I was allowed to watch very, very little, and my mother wouldn't let me watch Raiders because of this scene when they open up the Ark. It's so scary. She had it built up in her mind. Speaking of things being scarier than what you can see, what was in my mind that happened in that scene, I don't think I uncovered my eyes until I was 35.
I'm excited for this because I have rewatched Raiders a bunch of times. Mm-hmm. I've even seen Temple of Doom a couple of times. I think I've seen this movie one time.
Oh, wow. Oh, I'm excited to watch this with you too. So I've seen this movie a lot. I think this was my family's favorite. We weren't allowed to watch Temple of Doom at all, ever. I didn't see that one until recently. I love all three of them.
Mm-hmm.
I even don't hate Dial of Destiny, but
Okay.
we'll edit that out in post. But no, I think this one is a lot of fun. So I'm super excited to go to 89. I'm excited to see what else is playing in 89 because we know, as always, Indiana Jones will be sold out on the weekend we show up.
You're so pessimistic, Ian.
I'm not that pessimistic. It's the name of the show, bro.
That's fair.
All right. Well, can't wait.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us on this journey through 1975. I had a great time. Hope you did too. Make sure and come back for more. Follow us on Instagram, Threads, and X at soldout_pod. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube. Sign up for our newsletter at upleftmedia.com. Like, subscribe, review in all of those places. Ian, where can they find you?
Well, I am at Ian_upleft at all the things. And you mentioned our newsletter. I want to say as well, if you do follow and subscribe, you can actually get lots of great sold out news and updates, as well as advance notice on the movie that we will be watching and discussing each week. So if you want to stay up to date with us, that's how you do it.
But you're going to tell them in advance? I just have to walk in here. I can be found at Michael_upleft at all of the places. See you next time.
See you next week on Sold Out.
Sold Out is an Upleft Media production. Hosted, written, and produced by Ian Tarter and Michael Smith. Edited and sound engineered by Ian Tarter. With special thanks to Rosie Page.